Welcome to Bad Goodbyes. Each week on our show, we spotlight species from the IUCN Critically Endangered Red List. These are plants and animals with decreasing populations, nearing the edges of extinction. We'll share species research, information, and conservation proposals, and then we'll spend part of the show opening a space for contemplation and awe. We'll perform a soundscape of gentleness, of reflection, of delight, and maybe of grieving. Without conservation activity and significant societal shift, many of these species may not survive the 21st century. And so perhaps we might acknowledge their journey with a moment of our attention, a recognition of our kinship, and with a commitment to personal and systemic change. Thank you for listening. On today's show, we consider the white-winged flufftail. The white-winged flufftail is a critically endangered avian, a bird, native to Africa, specifically Ethiopia and South Africa. Its scientific name is Sarothrura ayresi. The white-winged flufftail is a small bird, measuring roughly 5.5 inches beak to tail feather, with a wingspan of about 9 inches, and weighing roughly 1 ounce. Their plumage is a warm reddish brown on their head, breast, upper back, and tail feathers. The lower back and wings are black, marked with white spots and lines, and their belly and their secondary flight feathers, which are revealed only when the wings are spread, are white, which gives the white-winged flufftail part of its name. The other part, the flufftail part, describes the species' tail feathers, which are short and have a soft, downy, fluffy appearance. This characteristic is more pronounced in other species in their genus, like the red-chested flufftail or the Madagascar flufftail, but in general, flufftails have a kind of cotton ballish poof at their rear. So between that and their contrasting range of plumage and markings, the white-winged flufftail has a very textured and complex appearance, a camouflage in its native habitat, a characteristic that reflects its primarily ground-dwelling behavior. The white-winged flufftail is considered terrestrial, meaning that it spends most of its time on the ground, hidden within dense vegetation, in reeds and grasses, primarily walking, not flying, moving slowly, stealthily, avoiding detection. When threatened, it will briefly take flight, but only a few feet in the air and only for a few dozen yards before diving back into the brush cover. It is elusive, secretive, relying on stealth and avoidance as a defense from likely aerial predators like harriers and hawks. Relatedly, it is crepuscular, meaning that it is primarily active during the twilight, at dusk and at dawn, only foraging and calling in that low light, spending the daylight and moonlit hours hidden away. It is a solitary bird, generally observed alone or in mating pairs. It does not flock or congregate in groups. And motion sensor cameras have observed intra-species and interspecies territorial behavior. Males will flash their white-winged patches, charge, and make hissing sounds at both other members of their species and at small birds of other species in defense of their territory. An individual's or mating pair's territory is roughly 8 acres, and all day-to-day activities, roosting, mating, feeding, take place in these relatively small, densely vegetated plots. The white-winged flufftail is omnivorous, feeding on beetles, moths, flies, spiders, and small crustaceans, as well as grain seeds and plant shoots. The flufftail forages from the safety of dense cover in microhabitats where its prey is likely to be concentrated, so soft muds and in shallow water, plucking prey directly from the ground, from plant stems, and from the water. In the dream, with anticipation of the twilight, of the softening of contrasts, of the easing of intensities. Here in the hours between sun and moon, or moon and sun, the interim, the liminal. Here in that time between times to live most fully, to celebrate in blurred light under purple skies, sharing the bright stitchings beneath our dark cloak, calling to our love among the reeds. Here in this brevity, where the veil is thin, we feast, we sing, we stretch our wings. In the dream. The white-winged flufftail forms monogamous pairs to mate, though we do not yet know whether these pairs persist across mating seasons. Mating season is in the summer and camera traps have captured some courtship behavior. Specifically, a distinct short flight wing flapping, performed by both males and females, in which their white secondary flight feathers are prominently displayed. A kind of attention-grabbing demonstration of their suitability as potential mates. Once a pair bond forms and mates, a nest is constructed on the ground in the dense vegetation with a preference for areas of tall, mixed sedges in shallow water. Both parents incubate the 3 to 5 eggs and defend the nest for roughly 2 to 3 weeks, and then the chicks hatch precocial, meaning they are born relatively well developed and are quickly mobile, able to leave the nest and begin walking soon after birth. Shortly after they emerge from the nest, the parents shepherd the chicks to areas of even denser vegetation and deeper water for protection as they develop. Because of this elusive behavior, we do not know how long the chicks remain in parental care, but we have found that they reach reproductive maturity in about a year. And individuals can live up to 10 years old. The white-winged flufftail is native to Africa, with 2 populations in Ethiopia and South Africa. For most of the 20th century, it was thought that these were a single migrating population, but recent research has determined that these are 2 wholly distinct populations which do not migrate and most likely do not interbreed. Comparative genetic analysis of both populations is ongoing, but it is unlikely that the species, which is not a strong flyer, crosses this 2,000-mile expanse to interbreed. We find both populations in high-altitude marshlands. In Ethiopia, in highlands near Addis Ababa, and in South Africa, in the provinces of the Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Free State. In Ethiopia, their habitat is roughly a mile above sea level, and in South Africa, it ranges from roughly 1/2 to 1 mile in elevation. In both locations, we find shallow, slow-flowing water and peaty soils. Peat is a kind of soil formed in water-saturated environments where plant material only partially decomposes, so the soil has high organic matter content, is acidic, and holds moisture. Within these marshlands, the white-winged flufftail prefers specific water depths between 1 to 10 inches and is not found in areas that are either too dry or too deeply flooded. And they prefer very dense vegetation coverage, so sedges, tall water grasses, and reeds that range from 1 to 3 feet in height. In both locations, summer highs average in the mid to upper 80s Fahrenheit, and winter lows in the mid 50s Fahrenheit. And both regions see between 25 to 30 inches of precipitation per year. The white-winged flufftail shares its habitat with common reed, African marsh harrier, southern cutgrass, slender knotweed, Denham's bustard, blue crane, flay rat, Jersey cudweed, African grass owl, southern oribi, black stork, yellow-breasted pipit, Rudd's lark, pale smartweed, lesser kestrel, plain ragwort, southern bald ibis, Nepal reedgrass, secretary bird, Cape vulture, rough-haired golden mole, common crane, spot-breasted lapwing, robust golden mole, lesser pond sedge, orange amber butterfly, and many, many more. The white-winged flufftail's population has been dramatically reduced by anthropogenic activity that's human-caused. In both Ethiopia and South Africa, habitat loss and degradation is their primary threat. In Ethiopia, this is the conversion of wetlands for agriculture, overgrazing by domesticated livestock, and the mowing of wetland vegetation for livestock feed. The white-winged flufftail is a ground dweller that relies on these dense grasses, so nest trampling by livestock and habitat conversion is an existential risk. Currently in Ethiopia, more than 90% of the wetland habitat suitable for the flufftail has been completely altered or entirely lost. In South Africa, similarly, habitat conversion for agriculture and overgrazing threaten the species. Additionally, infrastructure projects, like the construction of roads and dams, are changing and fragmenting the flufftail's home. And development by the mining industry both degrades the landscape and pollutes the waterways and wetlands of its habitat. Lastly, human-induced climate change is a long-term threat. In both Ethiopia and South Africa, climate models predict an increase in the frequency and severity of extreme weather, likely leading to severe drought, causing the shallow wetlands to dry out, rendering them uninhabitable. And also more flood-prone, with intense rains washing out nests and leading to water levels that are too deep for the bird to forage. Fortunately, the white-winged flufftail is legally protected internationally and in Ethiopia and South Africa. In In Ethiopia, sections of its small remaining habitat have been fenced off to prevent disturbance from livestock. In South Africa, some portions of its habitat is on protected lands, including the Middelput wetland, which forms part of the recently declared Greater Lochinvay Protected Environment, and the nearby Verlorenvallei Nature Reserve, which are both in the Mpumalanga province. There are habitat management and restoration projects in place to preserve and improve remaining habitat, including wetland rehabilitation projects and community patrols of breeding areas to prevent unsustainable grass cutting and overgrazing. Recent scientific research uncovered a previously unknown population in South Africa, and studies of the species and concerted conservation attention is ongoing. Nevertheless, the white-winged flufftail has been considered critically endangered on the IUCN Red List since 2013, and their population is currently in decline. Our most recent counts estimate that less than 1,910 white-winged flufftail remain in the wild. Information for today's show about the white-winged flufftail was compiled from the African Eurasian Migratory Waterbird Agreement, International Working Group for the White-winged Flufftail, from Conservation Biology, Volume 34, from the IUCN, from BirdLife International, from Bird Conservation International, Volume 29, Number 3, from Avian Conservation and Ecology, Volume 15, Number 2, from Ostrich, the Journal of African Ornithology, Volume 31, from Durban Natural Science Museum Novitates, Volume 37, from Avibase, the World Bird Database, from the Royal Society Open Science, Volume 8, Number 11, from Birds of the World at the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and from Wikipedia. For more information about white-winged flufftail conservation, see BirdLife South Africa at birdlife.org.za. So now I would like to perform some music in hopes of holding a space to be in contemplation of the other lives with whom we share our precious earth. I do not intend to put meaning upon or extract meaning from the white-winged flufftail. Instead, I want this music to simply express my human awe at other life. So I will pause in this space of sound and reflection, and I warmly invite you to join me. I honor the life force of the white-winged flufftail. I will commit its name to my record. I am so grateful to have shared time on our planet with this being. And I lament the ways in which I and my species have harmed and diminished this species. I grieve. And so in the name of the white-winged flufftail, I pledge to reduce my consumption, my carbon footprint, and my wastefulness. I pledge to acknowledge and attempt to address the costs of my actions and inactions. And I pledge to resist the harm of plant and animal kin and their habitats by individuals, corporations, and governments. I forever pledge my song to the witness and memory of all life, to a broad celebration of biodiversity, and to the total liberation of all beings. This has been Bad at Goodbyes. Thank you for listening. Until next time, let's take care of each other and all of our kin.